Hello, everybody. Welcome to sportsbookreview.com. Filming in the studio today. So a little bit of a different setup, but we are talking Winter Olympics 2018. I am the presenter. I'm going to admit I am no expert, but I do have some experts to hand. That is Martin Green and Big Man on Campus. Two men of many talents when it comes to all the different sports and sports betting. Martin, Big Man, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having us,
Thanks
Nat.
for having us.
Always a pleasure. Now, just wanted to say these videos are going to be clipped up. We're talking three things today, which is total medals, looking at the sort of the top countries to win the most medals, and then also total number of medals that USA can hope to achieve or win, and also if there's value to be betting. Then we will then move to the third clip, which is where we're going to have Ian Cameron on from the Ice Guys. So super excited to speak with him, and that will be ice hockey. So 3 segments. They will be clipped up and put into articles that are over at Sportsbook Review. Martin has kindly written those and packed full of information and tips. So make sure to keep a lookout for those. Sportsbook Review /picks. And then I think it's more sports. Alrighty then, so total number of medals. So we're mainly going to look back at 2010 and 2014 Winter Olympics. And interestingly, the USA have won the most medals, but they are not first because obviously they didn't win the most gold medals. Starting with you, Big Man. How important, obviously it's quite a big thing, how important are the Winter Olympics for the USA?
I think they're pretty important. I mean, again, you're starting to see a lot more on TV about it. I think people are generally interested. Is it going to get as much publicity as, the really big sports? No, unfortunately. It's kind of on a similar level to soccer, frankly. To me, I do think there's definitely a lot of niche people, though. There's plenty of skiers, a lot of snowboarders anymore. Guys like Shaun White and the X Games have done a great job kind of growing the interest in the Olympics. And I think for a lot of people, it's kind of something every couple of years, kind of like the World Cup, basically, where you're going to get a lot of these people that may not watch soccer the rest of the years when there's no World Cup, but when this all comes around, there's some general interest. And I think betting obviously adds a lot to it as well. You can people like curling. People have started to get into, the bobsled kind of stuff. So I think there's a general interest for it. And I could say I'm excited. I think there's great betting value if you know where to look and you have the time to study it.
Yeah. What about in the UK, Martin? Has there been much hype leading up to the Winter Olympics?
I think it's relatively niche over in the UK simply because despite getting a lot of rain, we don't get any snow really throughout the year. So I think due to a lack of particularly exciting prospects from the UK, they're not putting a great deal of focus on it. But the BBC is pretty partisan in its worldwide coverage. So you see a lot of different sports there. And I think everyone's interested to see the situation in PyeongChang and what might happen with the North Korean athletes going there. There's been a lot of focus on the doping ban for Russia and how that's going to affect things. So probably more focusing on the news and the technology that's going on a bit more than the actual sport so far. But yeah, once it gets going, then it'll ramp up and interest will build, I think. But like Big Man says, not the most popular of events here, but it will still be reasonably well
Yeah.
covered.
Well, I tell you one player. Well, I'm in Costa Rica, and I tell you, I haven't heard a whiff of the Olympics. Obviously, apart from at SBR, no, it's just not on anybody's radar. But it's definitely sort of more likened to the colder countries. And one such country is Canada. My husband is Canadian. My mother-in-law literally is not going to leave the house. She's watching Olympics for the next sort of month. So obviously for them it's a huge focus and not really a surprise. They won 2010, came second in 2014. So depending on the country and definitely the coldness of the country as well, I think, for the Winter Olympics. But right, let's take a look. Now, interestingly as well.
Hey, Nat.
Yeah.
Yeah, one thing I did want to add, I think I think the Winter Olympics are a little less popular just because you have to look at like in America, over in England, over in some of the bigger countries, there's so much going on right now on our calendar. I mean, you have the Super Bowl coming up, you have NBA, you have college basketball, you have so many different things. You look at the Summer Olympics; they're held in the summer. Only thing going on really in this country is baseball, and a lot of people are in the mood for something different. And you have great sports being represented. You have the soccer, you have the basketball, some stuff that you don't have at the Winter Olympics. So, I think that's a bit of a problem as well. It is kind of around. There's so many other sports right now that it's kind of hard to get as interested. But summer, I think, are a little bit more popular here. I know in the states, and I'm sure Martin could agree with that as well.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll tell you, listen, we're not whether, for us, it is about finding some value here and seeing if we can make some money. One thing to obviously think about, Russia is out this year, obviously, from the doping scandal, and they were a very big contender to pick up some medals. So what does that mean for the sort of the other top contenders, including the USA? So you've got USA, you've got Norway, you've got Germany, you've got Canada. Martin, what does that mean with Russia being out?
Well, they did win a lot of medals previously, so they were a big contender, but it was probably because there was so much doping going on that they were winning all those medals. Yeah, that means that there'll be about 21 extra medals up for grabs. And I think it will be spread pretty evenly among the biggest countries competing. I think a couple could go to the USA, a couple for Canada, but I think that Russia was quite versatile in 2014, spread itself out over a number of sports. So I think Switzerland, Germany, Norway, Japan, France, all of them can look to gain a couple more medals. But yeah, I'm not sure if it's quite enough to really ensure that a team like the USA gets 5 more medals or something like that. I think maybe 1 or 2 you could
Yeah.
benefit from.
Yeah, and interestingly, we've got Germany here. Best sports books actually I found right now. I don't know what you guys are using. Bovada and also Pinnacle have certainly got some nice lines. The lines that I am reading are from Bovada today. But Germany lead 2.75. Not bad odds, but Germany was only 6th in 2014. What sort of like spurred on the sort of the turn of events here and put them first, big man?
Well, I think obviously Russia being out is going to help everyone, and it's going to help Germany considerably. I mean, Russia won 33 medals at the last Olympics, so I mean, obviously that's a
Mm,
huge slice of medals being carried out. I think Germany's success a lot of the time in the Winter Olympics comes from their success in the biathlon, which is 6 different events. I mean, they've cleaned up there in their in their country's origins in the Olympics. I mean, they've won 16 gold medals in that sport. They're also very good at luge as well, which you can kind of clean up in. They really kind of are focused a lot of the time on winning some of the and kind of mastering some of the events with large amounts of different competition. So, you know, they're kind of the opposite of the U.S., where the U.S. is more focused on snowboarding and skiing and that sort of thing. It's interesting how the different countries are kind of good at certain things. With Canada and curling and hockey. I mean, and that's what makes the Olympics so great. And it's going to be like 3 different countries really just battling it out, and one of the big boys is gone. So it's really just kind of we're focused on just 3 now as opposed to 4, which is nice. And those are all going to kind of break through all those different ones. So that'll add to why Germany, I think, has got to be the leader. Plus, they focus on sports that are generally have plenty of competitions in it, and they're very good at that.
yeah, just got a message here from Dalo4 as well, which says that English books have Norway as the favourite. They picked up the most. Well, they were first. Sorry. In 2014, they're priced 2.75 as well at Bovada. Is it between those two countries, Martin?
I think so. Yeah, they're very close in the betting. Yeah, with the UK books, Norway is the very slight favourite, but there's like half a point in it. So they're pretty much neck and neck at Bovada. You can get plus 175 on both of them. And exactly like Big Man said, Germany is always very strong in luge and biathlon. It's also got some contenders in bobsleigh, skeleton, and the Nordic combined events. But Norway's very, very strong in cross country skiing and snowboarding, and there's a lot of medals there too. Country like USA, it's only going to win medals in 10 of the 15 sports, so you're already quite handicapped there because they're just not strong enough in some of those other ones. So yeah, I think those are the 2 that are the most specialist, and it probably is going to come down to those 2 again. But yeah, you have to say that USA's got an outside chance, but I'll be going for Germany just to narrowly sneak it, I think.
Okay, Germany to narrowly stick it. USA priced 5 here. I've got for US odds. Do check out. I'll see if I can put the link in the description actually of Martin's articles. He's got all the odds in US odds. All right, so Germany. Martin started off there. Germany to win the most medals. Big man, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with him 100%. I could actually, at Five Dimes, which is a generally U.S. book, they have Norway as the favorite as well. I just think Germany's just a little bit more well-rounded on everything. Like Martin said, the U.S. is really handicapped just because, like he said, they do only have 10 of 15 events. I think an interesting point, and I know we'll get into some of the particular events, but I think some of the events, you look at some added events. In curling, they have the mixed doubles now, which I think the U.S. might have a shot in, just because they have two people that are very good at that in curling, and they've kind of attacked that sport. But yeah, I'm going to go Germany just because it's the better price. Frankly, I can get 2.55 or plus 155 at Five Dimes. So for me, I think it's very close, but I'm obviously going to take Germany just because I trust them a bit more, and I'm getting better odds.
Okay, I can't hear Big Man. Is his Big Man muted? All right,
Big man.
there he
I'm
is.
here.
Oh, there he is.
Okay.
There he is. All right.
But yeah, I was just saying basically I would go with Germany slightly just because I think they're better, and I'm actually getting better odds on them. I can get 2.55 as opposed to the slightly lower ones with Norway.
Okay, all right. So Martin, big man on Germany. Moving over now, total number US gold medals. So Bovada has set the line 10.5, over 10.5, under 10.5, both priced 1.87. Definitely to bear in mind, obviously, with Russia being out. Last two Winter Olympics, they have picked up 9. Martin, I was reading in your article as well, there was... what was it? It was a report or something, and it was saying that they were favouring the under on the medals, but you seem to be leaning on the over. Could you expand?
Well, there's a company called Grace Note, which has a relatively robust record of predicting the Winter Olympics. It's part of Nielsen, which is an analysis company that market researches a lot of different things in a lot of different industries. It's not completely watertight, but they do have a reasonably strong track record in the Winter Olympics, and they're suggesting that USA is going to get 10 golds and 29 medals in total, which would leave it third once again, with Germany out in front on 14, and then Norway in second on 12. And they really go into it in quite a lot of depth and detail, who's going to win what, where the golds are going to come from. And you have to say that a lot of them do look interesting. I'm sure they'll get one or two out, but I think 9 or 10 looks like a pretty realistic goal for USA this time around, simply because they're not too strong in those events like biathlon. They've got a lot of individual talent, but when it comes to the outright markets for each event, there's not too many Americans that are the favourite. I think there's about 8 or 9, and I think that sounds about right. So I imagine a lot of patriotic bettors would go for the overs and hope for the best, especially with Russia not competing, although some Russian athletes are going to be there. But I think just looking at it a bit more analytically, I'm going to go for the unders. I think it's going to be very close. So Bovada has set a very difficult line there,
Mm.
but I can see them. They got 9 in the last Olympics and 9 in the one before that, and I could see them getting a third in a row there. So 9 or 10 looks about right, but it's going to be very close.
It is. And again, those odds 1.87. I'm just not sure if it's enough whether to decide either way. I think for the purpose of this show, certainly it's good to say what we think anyway. The price 1.87. But you're right, with Russia out of the way, and then also we've got Lindsey Vonn, and now in 2010 won gold for downhill skiing. She was out for 2014, but she will be back with a possible chance of winning gold. Obviously now a bit older, but what are your thoughts there, big man, on the number of golds? Are you patriotic? Do you think you can get the over 10.5?
I'm definitely patriotic. I'm actually quite bullish on the U.S. in the Olympics. I actually think there's some decent ways that they can get up and over that 10 and a half. I mean, Martin mentioned obviously Russia being out's helpful. You mentioned Lindsey Vonn, who didn't compete in Sochi in 2014. She's back at full health. You look at it in snowboarding, games that the U.S. generally dominated. And you always have Shaun White on the men's side. Chloe Kim, who has taken snowboarding by storm, a 17-year-old. She's from South Korea. She moved to the U.S. when she was young. I mean, she's killed the X Games. She's poised to do well in the snowboarding events. Michaela Schifrin in skiing as well. Interesting thing from Schifrin, she was actually injured this morning though in a crash. From what I've heard though, she's okay. But I mean, she's another one. The bobsled team is quite positive about their optimism in the women's event. I mentioned the curling's mixed doubles with the brother sister team out of Wisconsin that have done some good things as well. They're always pretty good in skiing. I'm actually pretty bullish on them. I think you have plenty of medals to be had here. You look at Gus Kenworthy in freestyle skiing as well. He was kind of a person of note. He actually came out sexuality wise over the break. And from what he's discussed, it's a weight lifted off his shoulders. He was already doing quite well. He won silver in 2014 also. So there's a lot of silver medalists poised to maybe get up and over that hump and become gold worthy. I'm actually quite bullish here on plenty of U.S. Players here.
Okay, well, the question obviously 1.87, considering that it could go either way. It's almost like a 50-50
Sure.
on this one. Do you think there's value at that 1.87?
I think when you're betting the Olympics, particularly when you're betting almost like futures odds in medal counts and things like that, um, you have to remember your money's going to be held for a couple weeks. And when I look at betting value, am I getting value here? Not particularly. It's more of a future. I would much rather get, obviously better odds here. I don't look at futures and medal counts as a way to make a ton of money. I'm looking more or less at the events themselves, day to day. But if I had to play these, yeah, I would kind of be bullish on the U.S. If I'm going to play it, I'd be rather bullish in general and say that maybe they can, be a team that you could take it 4-1 to win the medal table. And most of that's patriotic and really just being bullish on the market. But are you asking, do I have value here? Not really. I mean, I'm laying one minus 125 on over. I'll say this: I am quite bullish, but I need better prices to lay the gold
Yeah.
medal fixtures.
Yeah, and now Martin, you said you were saying that you were looking at sort of which US are favourites in which sports. Are there any bets right now? Any sort of sports where USA are sort of favourites to win with value? Did you find any?
Yeah, I mean, you can get 3-1 on Lindsey Vonn, and I think she's going to win the gold medal. So 3-1, I'd certainly suggest is value. Um, Jamie Anderson in the snowboard looks pretty good. You can get Brittany Bowe looks interesting at plus 900 in the speed skating 500 meters. I think Ted Liggety's got a decent chance in the men's slalom. So there's a lot of favourites that are better than even money that you can back, and there's also a lot of slightly longer priced ones that you can go for. Tyler Wallish and Alex Fever in the ski cross. Um, Women's ice hockey. I know it's not great odds, but minus 120 is the favourite. That's 1.8. I think they can get the job done. Yeah, there's a few out there that you can look to. Definitely, like Big Man says, you can really get deep into it. You said the Gus Kenworthy. Yeah, he took silver. I think he's the second favourite, so you can get pretty good odds on him. Yeah, there's a fair bit of value in there. You just have to spend quite a lot of time going through all the different events and picking out some of the ones that you fancy the most. But yeah, I'd certainly look for those ones. Michaela Schifrin, she looks a decent price. You can get, she's only minus 450 in the slalom, but she's plus 150 in the giant slalom. She's not quite as strong there, but I think she could take another gold. So yeah, the value is there to be had if you look deep into it.
Yeah, Yeah, I'm going to call Ian Cameron from the Ice Guys in about a minute. But before I do, just quickly want to shout out Ryan Metvia. Love the variety of shows lately. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you for your support. And Big Man, final question to you will be, have you got your eye again? Mainly sort of US focused, unless you have other bets as well. Any bets are sort of standing out right now that have got that value on a sort of a favorite or a sport that you like?
Yeah, again, I think I'm going to be heavily involved with snowboarding. I like it. It's interesting. I've watched it in the X Games. I think the girl Chloe Kim, I think she's someone that's really kind of came up huge lately. I mean, the Winter X Games, she was fantastic. She has the kind of interesting life story. She's from South Korea. It's kind of her going back home. Martin mentioned Jamie Anderson. She won gold in 14, so that's obviously someone I'll be looking at. And then obviously Lindsey Vaughn, downhill skiing. She has a bit of a chip on their shoulder after injuring herself in the last Olympics. And then Schifrin. I mean, I want to read more into this fall she took in Italy this morning, kind of practicing for all this. That's a concern. But also this bobsled team, Alina Myers Taylor, she's been very much in the news in the U.S. as far as gender equality and doing all sorts of things with that. She's kind of been a face of that. She's obviously says there's some real positivity with this bobsled team, so that'll be interesting. Um, and kind of what I said, Gus Pentworthy, he's obviously a very good athlete as well in the skiing. So yeah, I'm going to be taking a look. Most of my stuff will be around the U.S. athletes, though, for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Couple of questions as well. Sorry, before I like Dalo for Laura Dalmir. Bet anything she's involved in. Won 5 golds at World Championship last year. Dalo 4 is regular commentator on our soccer shows. Newcastle fan. It's great to see as well the diversity of the sports that you know, just like Martin and Big Man here. And then we've got freestyle for Kiri here. How confident are you picking Olympics compared to other sports? That is a fantastic question. Martin, how confident are you?
Less confident, I'm going to say. I just think there's less information out there. There are fewer statistics that you can access to arm yourself with before making your decisions. I don't think they're quite as well publicized. You don't see them on TV quite as much. So I think I'll stick to the bigger sports and the ones that I do know the most about, rather than trying to spread myself across all 15 events. Obviously, I wouldn't be as confident as when I'm picking soccer or tennis or cricket or something like that. But I think if you do your research and you get to know, choose a few that you like the look of, like Big Man's doing with snowboarding, really getting deep on them and try and make some profit there rather than just throwing money around all the different events, because you can never hope to get a strong enough grasp on all of them, I think.
Yeah. Do you concur, Big Man?
I would say, I think for me, as I do in every sport, is trying to find niches in those particular sports. I would say compared to like the Summer Olympics, I would say no. I really do a ton as far as basketball, boxing, soccer. I really try to research that stuff, and I'm pretty confident in the stuff that I do with the basketball and that kind of thing. Plus, you have ready accessible to watching the different leagues and just knowing about them. Winter Olympics are fun. I spent time on them, so yeah, I'm confident what I do. Plus, this year there's not a huge pool. You have one country not involved that's so important to the games themselves. So there's less work you have to do, but they're real fun. I mean, day to day, it kind of breaks the monotony of some of the other sports. So, but am I as confident as I am in college basketball? No, college basketball is my passion. It's my favorite sport. I do, and I dedicate my life to it. So no, I wouldn't say I'm that confident, but
I thought Premier League
I'm
was,
confident,
Big
sure.
Man.
Oh no, look, I love Premier League, but if there was one sport that if you said, "Hey, we're taking sports betting away and you have to watch one sport for the rest of your life," it would definitely be basketball. That's where I kind of came up, and it's been in my life for a long time. So yeah, I mean, I love all the other sports, but they don't hold a kin to basketball, unfortunately.
All right, cool. Listen, I'm going to bring Ian Cameron on the line now. He is the ice hockey guru. He heads up the Ice Guys. Hopefully you guys have seen his show. Very informative, and he certainly knows what he's talking about when it comes to ice hockey. I'm going to bring him on the line now. Ian, how's it going? Nice to see you. I haven't seen you for a while. How's it going?
It's going great, Natalie. Good to be doing a show with you finally for the first time. Big man I know all too well, and Martin Green. Good to be with you as well. Looking forward to talking
Hey,
some ice hockey here for the Olympics coming up next month. Let's do it.
Yeah, super excited. You're based in Canada, is that right?
That is correct. I am Canadian, born and raised, still living here today, just about an hour from Toronto, in case you want to know exactly the proximity. And obviously, it's the national sport here. It's hockey. It's the thing. It's basically Canada's football. What football is in the United States, American style football. What soccer is in England, Germany, Italy, all of those countries. Hockey's the sport here. It's a beloved sport. They will flock to bars to watch a World Junior Hockey Championship. That is how intense they are about their sport.
Yeah.
And as a result, it's a sport I followed all my life, been betting it for years, and looking forward to hopefully making some money and putting some money in the viewers' pockets with Olympic hockey coming up.
Fantastic. And but Canada is also very much behind the Winter Olympics. I know my husband is Canadian, and really, it's a really big thing, right?
Yeah, the Winter Olympics, that's our strength. I guess if you're
Yeah.
comparing winter to summer Olympics, we're better at winter. We're stronger. We send more athletes to the Winter Olympics. And you look at the medal count right now. What are we? Fourth favorite in terms of total medals for the Winter Olympics upcoming. We're right behind the U.S. in that regard, fourth from the top. So from that standpoint, there's a lot of expectations and a lot of positivity about Canada's prospects coming up here at these Winter Olympics in PyeongChang, South Korea.
Yeah, yeah. Looking now, actually, no, sorry. Final question before we start to get on to the medals and things is with the ice guys. Are you covering ice hockey Winter Olympics?
I will not be doing Olympic hockey on the ice, guys. That's going to strictly stick to NHL hockey throughout the week. So Olympic hockey will be, obviously, if you got time to have me on the bankroll here for the Olympics, I'll be glad to join you and help you out.
Absolutely. Well, first question is it's the Olympic athletes of Russia that have a small lead as far as odds here. They're priced at 3 at Bovada. Canada comes in second, priced 4. Is Canada's team depleted from sort of obviously 2010 and 2014, and why is that?
Well, the big story
massively,
coming
yeah.
into the men's Olympic hockey here in this tournament is the fact that there's no NHL player participation in these Olympics on the men's side. Gary Bettman, the commissioner of the NHL, did not come to a deal with the IIHF and with the IOC, the International Ice Hockey Federation, the International Olympic Committee, to send NHL players to these Winter Olympics to represent men's hockey. So as a result, Canada and the United States, for instance, are two of the nations most affected by this, probably in a negative light. You're looking at a situation now where these two countries, they've got to pull the American Hockey League, which is basically like the farm league system, to the NHL. They've got to pull players from maybe some of the players from the junior ranks, some Canadian and American citizen players that are currently playing in European leagues like the KHL, like the Swedish Elite League, like the Swiss League, like the German League. You go on down the list, there's a bunch of Canadian and American born players playing overseas right now. So as a result, there's going to be a lot of videotape going through, a lot of due diligence being put forth by the management teams of these two countries, trying to find out and put together a roster not comprised of NHL players. It's a difficult task. You got to try to find the best of the bunch out there. And as a result, it's put a unique twist, Natalie and company, on this Olympic hockey tournament. Is this going to be on the men's side? Is it going to be a true indication of who the best hockey nation is in the world? Without NHL player participation, you could argue it won't be.
Yeah, yeah. I think also it also could provide a sort of a platform sort of for names that we haven't really heard to really shine through. Do you think that could be the case?
It very well could. Think about this. I mean, what if the basketball tournament in the summer did not have NBA participation? So that's basically what you're comparing this to here. No LeBron James, Kevin Durant. No Summer Olympics for you. You're going to get some D-League player representing your country. I mean, and that's the frustration now. Their interest and excitement and enthusiasm in Canada even has waned a little bit for the men's hockey tournament, because they're looking at their roster and saying, here's Ben Scrivens, Justin Peters, and Kevin Poulin are three goalies, three guys who aren't even in the NHL anymore. Wojtek Wolski's on the Canadian roster. I didn't even know that guy was playing hockey. I thought, wow, he fell off a turnip truck. He's back playing hockey again. Like, I hadn't heard about the guy or seen him play hockey in years, and here he is representing Canada at the men's hockey tournament. So it's just those little things that people have got to get used to, and it's sort of been a little bit of a negative. I feel that there's no NHL participation. It's disappointing, but there's still going to be people waving the Canadian pom-poms, waving the flag, and still getting behind this team despite it.
Nice. Well, USA, they're sort of a longer favorite, so to speak, priced at 10. And again, you know, it's been a bit of a headache there for Tony Granato without the NHL players. What have you heard as a result of that, big man?
Well, I think that, Natalie, goes back to your original question on why the interest might also be down. You have elite leagues not allowing participation. I mean, the NHL is everything to the U.S. national team. I mean, you have some names. I mean, Brian Junta, who I'm sure Ian remembers from the Devils, and Chris Bourque, who has played in the league. You have certain guys, but yeah, if you're the coach, I mean, it's got to be brutal. I mean, you're literally, Natalie, think of this. It's similar to you know no Premier League players when there's an FA Cup or something. I mean, it would kind of be brutal. I mean, you're just dealing with lower level. It's like watching when we do European qualifying in the World Cup. We're dealing with just crap teams, Gibraltar, Faroe Islands. I mean, it's very similar to that. I mean, you're dealing with people that aren't good representation of the teams, and Ian kind of detailed that. It's a shame. I don't know why they couldn't strike a deal. It's a shame they can't, and now we as a country, because I think that's the general thing in the U.S. The big sport people want to watch is hockey. They want to watch their 1980 Miracle team and those kind of teams. You don't have that now, and I think it's taken away considerably to the interest in this country because it's not being represented. You have guys on the Hershey Bears and the randomness of AHL hockey. It's a bad product, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, Canada obviously won both 2010 and 2014. Their price, as I said, is slightly longer, priced 4. Do you know the team selection yet, Ian? And would you bet on it based that now there's sort of very little sort of like stats to sort of go on with this sort of new Canadian hockey team?
It is very, very. It's what this whole thing has done with no NHL involvement is it's leveled the playing field. It really has, and it's given the European nations even more of a edge. I mean, you look at the Olympic athletes of Russia as the favorites right now in the futures in terms of the men's Olympic hockey, and I don't understand that. Can we not just call them Russia? I know there's the boycott scenario and all that, but we still know it's Russia. Do we need to throw OAR in there? But can't do anything about that. It's a situation where Russia's got an edge. They're going to have a lot of KHL players. That Russians dominate the KHL. They're going to be able to handpick, their best players from that league. The Russian roster, oddly enough, is the one roster, guys, that hasn't been announced yet. That'll come later this week, but they'll have a very good roster, a very talented roster. Their issue, and why I don't think there's great betting value on them in the futures bet here, Natalie, is the fact that we're dealing with a Russia team that has had the old noose around their neck here at these Olympics in years past. They've not gotten the job done. It's been a gag fest. It's been, coughing up a lung in these big-time international hockey tournaments in recent years for Russia. Pressure's gotten to them. Haven't performed in the big spot to the level that certainly the Russians anticipate. This is supposed to be one of the premier hockey nations in the world, and they just haven't consistently performed and delivered the big game in the big moment. And that's going to be the concern moving forward. On paper, when their roster comes out, I'm sure I'm going to be looking at it and saying, wow, this team's probably as good, if not better, than everybody else that's sending a hockey team into this tournament. But mentally, is it going to be able to match what they're able to do physically on the ice? That's been their problem and their bugaboo in years past.
Yeah, you make a very good point there, Ian. What are your thoughts there, Martin? Should the Olympic athletes of Russia be favourites? Would they get your money at this point? They're priced 3, Bovada.
Perhaps. I think they have choked in previous years. They crashed out in the quarterfinals against Finland last time, so you have to set alarm bells ringing there. But yeah, they probably will be the strongest team on paper when they do announce their roster. They're going to have Markov, they're going to have Kovalchuk. They're going to have a good team. But I'm unconvinced, and especially at the shortest price going, I wouldn't think there's a great deal of value there. I think Sweden looks quite
Mm.
interesting. Silver medalists last time, get plus 400 on them. Swedish league looks pretty strong. Also, these European teams are going to lose out some of their best players as well because they're in the NHL. But I think there's interesting value on the likes of Canada and the USA as well. They seem to be really reveling in their underdog status. I know it's been a bit of a brutal process for the head coaches to try and pick rosters for the two teams, but I think it's been quite fun as well, trawling through the AHL, looking at former sort of washed up pros, getting players that have passed their best and they're plying their trade in Kazakhstan and Switzerland and stuff. And yeah, it's gonna make it a lot more interesting than just Canadian dominance. So while it's probably the popularity is going to wane in its heartland, might make it more interesting in Europe, and yeah, we could see some close, interesting games. But yeah, I still do think there's good value on the USA as underdogs and even Canada.
Yeah, yeah.
Sweden
What about
is a
you,
good
big
one.
man?
I just
Obviously,
wanted
it does seem very shaky, this betting market, ice hockey men, with this sort of new rule imposed. Which teams do you think could triumph?
I think Sweden, Ian will comment on. I think he'll make that case in a moment here. Sweden looks pretty good at 4-1. I mean, Ian, remember some of these names, Ian? I mean, some of these guys. I mean, Bergstrom, Lundqvist, Eric Gustafsson. I know he was with the Flyers for many years. There's some interesting names here, and you got guys that are really towards the end of their career. I mean, you got to wonder, are they? I mean, you got 35-year-olds on this Swedish team, a couple different 35-year-olds. I'd like to hear Ian's opinion on Sweden. I think they might be a bit of maybe a dark horse.
Yeah, I'm interested in teams, big man, with NHL experience, and there is some on this Sweden team. I know it's actually the poor man's Lundqvist that's on this Sweden team, Joel Lundqvist. That's not the Lundqvist
Right.
everybody thinks of. Is Henrik, the goalie, of course, for the
Right.
New York Rangers. But
If
Joel
he was
Lundqvist
on
is
it,
a guy that's
they would.
experienced.
They'd be favorites probably.
Yeah, exactly. But what I like about Sweden is they've got some players that do have some NHL experience that actually performed and produced at the NHL level for an extended period of time. I'm looking at Victor Stahlberg, a guy that was played with the Leafs, played with the Blackhawks, played with the Rangers over here in the NHL for many, many years. You look at, Joel Lundqvist had a brief stint. Stefan Kronwall on the blue line for Sweden is a guy that had extensive NHL experience, and I like their goaltending. Jonas Enroth and Victor Foster, two guys that have extensive NHL starting experience. They've played many games in the National Hockey League in between the pipes, both Enroth and Fost. That could give Sweden a little bit of a
Gustafsson, too.
puncher's chance, and the price is not bad at all.
Yeah, totally agree on that one. So right now, as it stands, Ian, do you have any money on the outright? Are you going to go and take it as a game by game basis?
In terms of the outright, Sweden has some value. I'll be looking at Sweden as an outright. Canada and the States, I'm just not sure how they're going to react with this new roster. I know Canada still has a lot of players that are playing again overseas. When you look at it, they've got guys that have been brief stays in the NHL. Cody Golubev, Marc-Andre Grignani have been played in the NHL. Rene Bourque's played in the NHL. Gilbert Brulé's played in the NHL. So Chris Kelly's been in the NHL for a while, but it's still overall, it's just not even close to the level of talent Canada's used to sending. Sweden, to me, from a futures perspective, does make sense. When I look at it, it's a decent price on the men's side for Sweden at about plus 332 at Pinnacle right now. Finland's not a bad option, plus 681. A real dark horse, real sleeper, if you want to go really crazy a little bit, Slovakia at 76-1. I actually kind of like what that Slovak team is doing. They've got Craig Ramsey as the team's head coach, a guy that's coached in the NHL as an assistant for years and years and years. He knows the NHL inside and out. It's a young team. They've got talent. And I think they're trying to play a up-tempo, fast style of hockey. So from a totals perspective, look to bet some of these Slovakia games over the total. When this tournament starts, they want to play up tempo, they want to play fast, they want to use their speed on all four lines. Something you want to keep in mind when these games start in a few weeks.
All right, nice. At Team Bankroll, we do like to be a little bit crazy, I have to say, Ian. So Slovakia 67, maybe Stuart from Tips HQ may also like that one as well. He likes to get a bit crazy. All right.
I know he gets a little bit crazy. I do
does.
watch the soccer shows from time to time. Yep.
Ice hockey women, and it looks like it's a 2 horse race. Sometimes the word legged slips in there. Sometimes Martin knows that one. But USA 1.8, Canada 2. Is there a dark horse at all here, Ian, or is it really between these two teams?
Yeah, you can try betting on someone other than Canada or the US here to win the women's hockey, but that's pretty much to me the equivalent of flushing the money down the toilet as far as I'm concerned. In fact, I think that would be a more effective use of your time than actually betting on a team other than Canada or the United States here in the women's hockey. I mean, really, when you look at the women's hockey here at the Olympics since it debuted in 1998, there's been 5 tournaments. US or Canada's won every one. And I don't see that changing. The gap between Sweden, Finland, Russia, and the rest, between them and Canada and the U.S., it hasn't really improved all that much. Maybe they've tightened the gap a little bit, but still none of those nations close to on Canada or the U.S.'s level. We will be looking at a USA versus Canada gold medal game here on the women's side. And if it gets to that, I say flip a coin. I think both of those countries can win. It's always a tight, compelling, competitive hockey game. No love lost for either country, Canada or the U.S. on the women's side. That's a really fierce rivalry. So I would be looking forward to seeing a gold medal game there. But I think it's Canada or the U.S. to win it for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Big man, Canada have won it 2010 and 2014 for ice hockey women, but it is the US that has a very slight sort of lead there on the odds, 1.8. Do you know why that is?
I can't say I do. Maybe Ian could. I think, Natalie, at the end of the day, I mean, you're really flipping a coin here. And I think for a sport that's just dominated by the same two, I'm really, and I'm not saying don't bet on it. If you feel you have an edge, bet on it. But I think it's got to be one of the events that we probably just lay off from. I mean, there's not a ton of value. It's dominated by two teams. At least in the men's side, you have a little bit of intrigue with, no NHL players and kind of an open this sort of thing. But I got to ask, I mean, Ian, real quick, and I know I'm sure we're short on time, but I was curious at Ian's. Did you have anything on curling? I know Canada's particularly good in curling. I was wondering if you had anything on that. I was kind of interested in that new mixed event that they're doing, but I don't know if you had anything on that.
Yeah, the women's hockey, I say Canada or the U.S. The reason why the U.S. is a slight favorite, I think U.S. head-to-head recently, like the last year and a half to 2 years, has been pretty good against Canada. They've sort of won the majority of the games head-to-head in these other tournaments that are held in between the Winter Olympics, and the U.S. has done well in them. But Canada's dominated here at the Olympics. I mean, Canada has won the last 4 gold medals here in women's hockey. So it's really tough. Like I say, it's a razor-thin margin, I think, between the U.S. and Canada. Curling-wise, Canada's good at curling, men's and women's side. I can tell you that consistently. Sweden's usually pretty good. You got those Norwegians are usually pretty good at curling. I'll throw one out there for figure skating, the ice dance. We're sending a really good ice dance team out there in Tessa Virtue and Scott Moyer. These two are fantastic. Tessa Virtue's gorgeous, by the way, fantastic Canadian woman. She does a great job with Scott Moyer. I got to throw that out. But they're a great team. Tessa Virtue and Scott Moyer. They're plus 165, I believe, right now to win the ice dance and figure skating. I think that's value. This team they've been to the Olympics many times. They know what they're doing. They're always well prepared. They have a great routine every single time out there. I think they got a chance to win it. Tessa Virtue, Scott Moyer, plus 165, win ice dance in figure skating. I actually have already bet that one. I like it a lot.
Fantastic stuff. Listen, I'm going to wrap things up now. The first sort of 2 clips of the show. I know Big Man Martin gave some tips, but just to wrap it up, what are your sort of the favorite bets that you're looking at right now? Going to start with you, Big Man.
Well, I haven't went through every single one yet, but I would definitely recommend. I like Michaela Schifrin a lot in the giant slalom and the slalom in general. I think she's an up and comer that we have to discuss. I mean, she's a gold medal winner already, and I'm looking a lot at snowboarding with Chloe Kim and always a Shaun White and all those guys as well. It's going to be a very intriguing Olympics, and I'll go out on a limb and I'll go over 10.5 gold medals. I'm fairly bullish on the U.S. team. I think there's a lot of unprovenness here. A lot of silver medals. I think we might turn a couple of those into golds this year.
All right, there we go. Martin, what about yourself? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I like Chloe Kim in the snowboarding and Jamie Anderson, looking at both of those two. I quite like Gus Kenworthy, I think he's on an upward curve and has a really strong chance. And Michaela Schiffon, like that one as well. Waiting to see on Lindsey Vonn. I didn't realise she'd been injured, but I thought that was probably my favourite at plus 300 going forwards. With the ice hockey, quite like Sweden, but also just quite fancy a longer shot on the USA at 9-1 as a bit of an underdog story. I know they've got a bit of a ragtag team of ex-pros, but at that sort of value, they still have some of the best players in Switzerland, some of the best players in Sweden. So I think they'll pull together a decent team, and looking forward to seeing that one too.
All right, great. So finally, Ian, over to you. What bets are you looking at right now?
Yeah, in terms of men's hockey future, top futures, probably Sweden or even Finland. I like that Finland team a lot as well. I think there's no value on Russia. I'm a little up in the air with Canada or the States. So Sweden, Finland's not a bad look. Even the Czechs. Czechs have some good players as well. You can't go wrong with those three. There's a guy on Czech Republic, by the way, on defense. His name's Michael Jordan, and it's Jordan. That's not Michael Jordan, the NBA great. Let's just make sure we get that cleared away. The Czech Republic do have a chance, though, I think. But Sweden, I really like. Slovakia, my dark horse. I think it's worth putting just a couple of bucks on that. Worth a shot. Women, it's tough. I think U.S. or Canada win that. Figure skating, like I said, ice dance. Virtue and Moyer plus 165. I think they can win that, and it's a good price.
Fantastic stuff. All right. For those joining for the very, very first time and don't know Ian Cameron, who has a show, Ice Guys, super fun. Make sure to tune in for that. Also follow him, Bobano, Bobano on Twitter. And then we've got Team Bankroll here. Martin W. Green is his Twitter handle. And then Big Man on Campus at Jeff Nadu. Thank you very much, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure. Best of luck. Maybe we'll see if we can squeeze something in next week as the Olympics heats up, narrowing on maybe a bit more on ice hockey and on specific sports themselves. But thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Nice.